Hi again. Welcome to chapter 14 of If We Were Giants. And I am so excited to continue to read this to you, and I hope that you are liking the story. So Kira woke to the sound of birdsong, the soft morning light, revealing the forest home around her. Slowly coming back to consciousness and the fresh open air was one of her favorite parts of living here. Luan's hammock hung empty beside her. That was unusual. He liked to sleep late. But Kira slowly reached above her head with both hands, working the sleep-sore kinks out of her back, remembering that he had planning to ask his parents for something today. So he's probably currying favor with them right now by getting an early start on his studies. The tree folk had no community school, no community services of any kind for that matter, so each family was in charge of teaching its own kids. Maham took this very seriously, drilling them on things like horticulture, the medicinal uses of plants, and the food preservation every morning. The afternoons were spent farther afield, hunting and trapping and building and exploring. But when Kira finally pushed herself out of the sleep sling and climbed up through the trap door, Luan was all by himself in the hut, slurping leftover stew for breakfast. "You're finally up. Good. I was just about to wake you. We have things to do." "We do? Where are Loba and Maham?" "They both went to the swamp. Father needed Mother's help today. Have you ever tried to carry a crocodile? Those things are heavy." "So no studies this morning? Really?" Luan shrugged and tried to pull off an innocent expression. "Well, if someone had left a note with parental instructions on it next to a window, I mean, who's to say that a breeze didn't come by and whoosh, snatch that note right off the sill and send it sailing away into the forest, never to be seen again? Things like that happen all the time. The world is a cruel and windy place." Kira rolled her eyes. "You're going to get us in trouble." Luan waved away her concerns. "Nah. You'll be so tired when they get back that they will have forgotten all about it." He grabbed a long, thin pouch from a hook on the wall and looped it over his shoulders. Kira could hear something rattling around in there. "Let's go." After shoveling in a few mouthfuls of stew, Kira followed Luan out of the hut and through several trees. He was working his way toward the ground, which was a little odd. Luan usually liked to stay as high up as possible. She could tell he was moving more slowly than normal, certainly slower than when he was with his friends. Luan was polite about letting Kira go at her own pace. He knew she was doing the best that she could. When they were down to where only a few layers of branches separated them from the forest floor, he stopped. "This looks perfect," Luan said. "I tried to pick a spot where the trees were packed pretty closely together. That should make it easier." He looked down and took a deep breath. "I hope." Kira looked around, wrinkling her brow. "Aren't we getting close to the river?" She cocked her head to listen for the telltale sign of the current, even though it would have been more sluggish now with the lack of rain. "You're not trying to trick me into looking at that stupid raft, are you?" "No, I promise. I just wanted to show you something." "Does this have anything to do with what you're planning to ask your parents today?" "It does." He sat down on a thick branch, took the pouch off his back, and set it on his lap. "Check these out." He pulled out two short, slender poles. They had been rounded into smooth curves at one end and had a loop of leather attached to the base. "Wait, are those—" "Yes. Tia helped me make them. Aren't they great?" He proudly held one up in each hand and shook them back and forth triumphantly. "Okay, so what are you going to do with them?" "What do you mean? Isn't it obvious? I've decided what I wanted to do with my life. I'm going to join a group of hook hunters." He noticed the expression on Kira's face. "What's the matter?" "I don't know, Luan. It's just... hook hunting is so risky. It's hard to imagine Loba being okay with this." Kira knew that bringing up his father's reaction was partly an excuse. She would be worried about Luan as well. "That man has been telling me I have to find my purpose ever since I learned to walk. Well, I've found it, and he's just going to have to be okay with it." Luan held her gaze, looking a little wounded. Parents react negatively to everything the first time they hear about it. I expected you to be happy for me, Kira. I'm sorry, she said with a sigh. Even though it made her uncomfortable, she had to admit it was the perfect job for Luan. And if he could get all of his energy out during the day on the hunt, maybe he would be a little calmer around the hut in the evenings. If he made it back in the evening. She pushed that thought aside. Luan was going to do whatever Luan decided to do, and Kira could either choose to support him or not. She nodded at the hooks in his hand. So, what's next? Do you have to practice with those things? She had no idea what was involved in joining a hook hunter group. I've already been. Here, watch this. Luan stood and wrapped the leather straps around his wrists. Then he leaped to a neighboring branch, looping the hook on an overhead limb, and stepped his way to another and another. He started out a little shaky, tentative, but as he traced a wide circle around the spot where Kira remained sitting, moving from tree to tree, she could tell he was becoming more confident. His speed was nowhere near that of the actual hook hunters, but it was clear he had potential. Luan was athletic and a natural daredevil. Now he needed to develop fluidity. He made a few more passes around her, gaining speed as he went. Aren't you supposed to be quieter? Kira called to him. I don't think hook hunters do all of that gasping and giggling. It kind of scares away the prey. I can't help it, he called back. This is so much fun. He must have heeded her advice, though, because he wiped the grin off his face and became silent and more intent as he continued to hook, jump, pull, lunge his way through the air. Kira leaned back and rested against the trunk, settling in for the show. Luan could probably want to do this all morning. As he zoomed around and around, the motion became hypnotic, and Kira could feel herself being lulled almost to sleep. That is, until one of Luan's hooks either had failed to gain purchase or he selected a bad branch. Either way, he lost his balance. Kira leaned forward and put her hands over her mouth as he crashed through the screen of branches, snapping and cracking them noisily until he ended up in a heap on the forest floor. At first, Kira was frozen to the spot. She had never seen Luan fall before, not once in all of the years she had known him. It was scary and unsettling. And was there something else? A memory of another boy falling from a tree? She pushed that thought away almost before she knew it had surfaced. Kira could hardly breathe as she watched Luan lying there, silently willing for him to move, to get up. Finally, Luan pushed himself into a sitting position, brushing leaves from his hair. He felt something all over, head and ribs and legs, and seemed to determine that he was all right. Kira felt like she could breathe again. That's when she heard people calling to each other, men, perhaps 4 or 5 different voices, deep, gruff noises. And she realized that she didn't understand the words. Luan tilted his head, listening. He had clearly heard them as well. Kira, eyes wide, frantically motioned for him to get up and join her in the tree. He popped to his feet and dashed for the trunk, perhaps limping a bit. When he got there, he scrambled up the tree until he was sitting on the limb next to her. He started to whisper something, but Kira shook her head fiercely and placed a finger over her lips. The two watched the forest together. Tromping through the brush came a half-dozen men, burdened by their spoils. One man had a forest buck slung around his neck, its 2 front hooves clasped in his right hand and the hind hooves in his left. Its throat had been slit to drain the blood, and its head lolled to the side, eyes blank. Another man carried a length of rope in each hand, 3 fat guinea fowl hanging from both. 2 other men supported a thick branch between them on their shoulders, the body of a leopard hanging from the middle. They stopped where Luan had fallen, pointing at the branches that had dropped to the ground, then looked up at the surrounding trees. Kira and Luan stayed very still, trusting their dull green and brown forest camouflage clothing to keep them hidden. As they watched as the men spoke to each other, and more of those words Kira did not understand, but at the same time found horribly familiar. Kira could hardly think about the words or the forest animals they were holding. She had eyes only for their appearance. their skeletal arms attached to tall and powerful bodies, leathery gray skin, each man with a shock of white hair. The clothes made from leather and some kind of hard, shiny metal, and the slender, cruel weapons belted at their waists. The takers had come to the tree folk. So there was chapter 14, and I'll see you back for chapter 15.